Another day. What do we have going on the front page of Netrunner DB today? Oh great. That's all we want to see. More Shaper nonsense. Nice to see this deck run 6 copies of Sure Gamble. So many programs. Brahmin? Add one installed non-virus program to the top of your stack. Wait a minute, wouldn't this be... Oh, non-virus, of course. I was gonna say, that would actually be useful for virus programs. This is a somewhat old AI breaker. Okay, so what? The plan is... you add these programs back to your... but that would get expensive. There must be more to this. You could add your Cubons, your egrets back, but those cost... well, the Cubon costs 0. Egret, of course, costing 2. You couldn't add the leech back. I think the Cubon is really what you would want to use there. Perhaps the mantle misdirection would also work. You wouldn't want to do that with your Rezekis. Self-modifying code would work, but I assume that the first 2 turns, or perhaps maybe even the first turn, is just woo into a self-modifying code into a Rezeki. A little expensive, though. What am I talking about? That's a lot of expensive. Basically increases the number of turns it takes Rezeki to pay off by 2, which is not quick. Turning wheel. Ice Carver? What is an Ice Carver doing here? Your boost ratios on Euler and Gauss aren't horrible. Or sorry, Euler and Gauss aren't horrible. I mean, 2 for 2 strength is a little annoying, but Euler's just 1 for 1. Why would you need an Ice Carver? There must be some other synergy going on here. A single Deuces Wild? Must have been extra influence left over. A Rebirth? Not many Shaper decks run Rebirth. Okay, so the plan is to do Kushik runs. DZMZ Optimizer. That makes a certain amount of sense. There's some pretty good synergy there between DZMZ and Brahmin. Oh, it's starting to make more sense now, actually. If you're installing your egrets, your clots, your mantles, and Rezekis for free because of DZMZ Optimizer, then suddenly using Brahmin seems a lot better. Flameout, though. What are we putting Flameout on? Oh, I'm missing the obvious synergy. The obvious synergy is that you can target your icebreakers to be returned to the top of your stack with Brahmin, and then reinstall them the next turn, gaining their extra abilities. Either break subroutines for free or +3 strength for free. Both of those pretty good. Okay, so I'm starting to see how this is coming together. Oh yeah, definitely. Look at this. Double Cyber Trooper to loot. You can only install one of these. You're not doing this for the link, although the link is nice. You're doing it for the +2 strength whenever you install something. Holy crap, your Gauss suddenly has 6 strength. Oh my goodness. And Brahmin is for the sentries. Seems a little dangerous, doesn't it? Oh, And the Ice Carver is because Brahmin sucks to boost. 2 for 1. Trying to think of any high strength sentries. We've got like Anansi is what, 5? The Dreamnet, because if you're using Cyber Trooper to loot, Cabanesa starts out with 1 link, so you're good to go on the double link for that card. Beth, because why wouldn't you if you're in Shaper? Prognostic Q-Loop. Oh, that's going to let you install your Icebreaker that's put on the top of your stack at the beginning of your run, clicklessly. Whenever an agenda is scored or stolen, gain 1 credit, then you may install 1 card from your grip. That's such a weird console. Why would you want Pantograph? I feel like... Wouldn't there be a better Shaper console to use? I don't know, what Shaper consoles are illegal these days? I promise we'll get into we'll get into your spectating games in a moment. I've been out of the game for a week. Been on a pseudo vacation. Staycation as they're called these days. We're just looking for console here, right? There we go. Alright. Taking a little while. Seems like it's a little slow today. That's fine. Pantograph, Anacam, Super Corridor, Dinosaurus, Mind's Eye. I guess actually there aren't. Wow. Wait, do all Shaper consoles just suck? I think they do. How did I never realize this before? I think it's because Astrolabe was used as the standard Shaper console for so long. I just kind of didn't pay attention to any of the others. Oh, that's why. That would explain why things are running slowly. Hang on. It's a race to find the cord. Don't worry, laptop. We can save you. All right. Yeah, okay, Pantograph being able to be installed for a meager 2 credits suddenly makes a lot more sense. It's the cheapest console currently in rotation. Since Astrolabe, rest in peace, is no longer with us. Yeah, you're never gonna use Maya. Comet is too complicated and almost no one uses that. Mirror is only if you're smoke. Daredevil is cool, but it's expensive. Same with Ubax. Ubax is nice, but very expensive. Mind's Eye is pretty cool. but it's not going to make you money. Pandagraph probably pays for itself over the course of the game. How many copies of Pandagraph were in that deck? Just the one. Still, though, you probably are just installing it for the extra MU. No, you're not, because DZMZ Optimizer lets you do that. Huh. I guess if you draw Pantagraph late, you don't even install it. Well, then again, this is a pretty MU-intensive deck. So between the 4 starting MU, 3 from here, and 1 from Pantagraph, you've got 8. Your breakers already account for 4 of that. Yeah, no, you probably install the Pantagraph for the cheap MU. It's just basically another copy of DZMZ Optimizer at that point, only it doesn't get you the money on the installs. Simulchip. What, to get your clots back, probably. Yeah, this seems like a pretty nice deck. Anyway, enough of that, let's actually have some fun. Whoa, we're turn 8. Turn 8. Let's see if we can find a different one. Turn... what? This is what I get for blabbing so much. But this is a sunny game. We don't get to see many of these. What turn are we on? We're pretty late into this one. It's actually pretty neck and neck here. 6-6. Looks like a triple click to break through a Fairchild and seize an advanced assembly line. No agenda here. Alright, it's not my style to start spectating on a game that is so late into the match, but we're already here. I'm already invested. What we're looking at is a fairly standard Sunny deck. Nothing too crazy going on here. Office supplies. Gachapon to burn through the 50 hand size. Sorry, 50 deck size. DreamNet fits into Sunny fairly well, although still it slows her down on the initial install. She has to actually make runs. No security nexus from Sunny, which is a little surprising. Security nexus being one of Sunny's most powerful cards, although we do see a white hat. Global Sec. Global Sec is a lot stronger than you would perhaps think when you first look at it. When your turn begins, you may lose a click. If you do look at the top card of R&D, it's actually pretty good. It's a little bit like Find the Truth with Adam, except you don't actually have to make a run. Anyway, not very much ice res on the side of HB. It is Precision Design. Precision Design seems to have swept the corpse scene by force. It's a lot of what we're just seeing lately. It was a Managarm, Skunkworks, and perhaps a card installed using advanced assembly lines, but it had to have been a non-agenda card? So I'm going to assume whatever that card is in Server 2 isn't an agenda. I didn't quite follow the exact happen. Nope. Chezzy's wrong. How did we get an agenda in there? What happened? Advanced assembly line, Sullen unseat card. Oh, it looks like it was just manually installed. Oh well. We didn't really get to see enough of that game to make it worth analyzing, so let's just hop out and see if we can find another one. Hey! Here we go. Alright. First game of the night. Let's see if we can zoom in just a little bit. First game of the night, Max versus NBN Reality Plus. The new NBN ID. wants to give tags and can gain 2 credits or 2 cards off of the first tag each turn. Nice card to use with ice like Ping or Funhouse. Although Ping, of course, has limited use. A decent amount of ice on the table as far as turn 3 goes. None of it rezzed. Sorry, turn 4. A run on the remote reveals a Ping. Corp decides to take 2 credits off of that, effectively rezzing Ping for 0 credits. Paperclip comes out of the bin, breaks that. Gets into the server and steals an AR enhanced security. We already see a news team in the score area of the runner, which means they are sitting at 0 agenda points, but AR enhanced security, or Ares as it's sometimes called, is a horrifying agenda to allow the corp to score, so almost always worth it to steal that at all costs to prevent the corp from scoring it. The runner themselves still sitting in a pretty good spot here, a pretty powerful spot. 17 credits. We do have the Black Orchestra in the bin already, so 2 of the 3 breakers down. Fermenter ticking credits up. There were 2 daily casts, or up to 20 credits. Overall, Max seems to be in a pretty commanding position. Even drops a boomerang on the new piece of ice, protecting the remote. It is res to be revealed as a IP block. Boomerang just cuts through that. Ping is nothing more than a ice wall at this point, so it's easily broken for a single credit with Paperclip. Gets into server 1, but it is just a Spin Doctor. Res to draw 2 cards. Limited number of options here for recursion. And the corp decides not to use it, allowing Max to pay the 2 credits to trash. Corp deciding perhaps that forcing Max to spend 2 credits right now is more valuable than recurring any of the 3 cards already in the bin. They only had the choices between 2 hedge funds and an attitude adjustment. They must not feel like they need the hedge funds. The hedge funds didn't seem like a terrible choice, but... Oh, but interesting. A preemptive action is played and recurs the Spin Doctor in both the hedge funds. So that must have been why. A lot of recursion in this Reality Plus deck. If they're running Spin Doctors and preemptive action, Reality Plus is only a 40 size deck. With that much recursion, what are they packing here? What do they need to recur like that? Anyway, with 3 pieces of ice on the remote, but 2 of them already known to be barriers, Max goes right back in, hits a turnpike. It looks like... I'm confused here. Did we take a tag from Turnpike? We must have. Took a tag from Turnpike. I think we took a tag from IP Block as well. The runner just deciding to go ahead and give the corp those tags. What am I talking about? No, Boomerang broke Turnpike. Where did those 2 tags come from? No, IP Block was... They came from News Team. Okay. We'll have to see if that ends up being the right or wrong choice. Keeping 1 in the score area and 1 in archives. I feel like you either want to do one or the other. You want to have them both in archives or both in your score area. Also, I think the runner trashed News Team. They shouldn't have done that. They should have just left News Team in the server. If they weren't going to add it to their score area, they should have just kept it in the server. That way when the corp overwrites the card, you know if it's an upgrade or an asset. That's fine though. Max bounces back up to 22 credits by popping the fermenter and drops a simul chip. Runs HQ and hits another turnpike. No boomerang this time, but decides to put a botulus on it using simul chip. Breaks through turnpike's singular subroutine, gets an HQ and hits a global food. It's only going to put them up to 2 points though, albeit the corp has 0. Card in server 1 ends up being a Project Beal, a 3-2, tying it up 2-2. No forward momentum on that agenda itself though, as it has no relevant text while in the corp score area. Unadvanced, or rather not over advanced, that is. A lucky run on R&D snags another Project Beal off the top. Max goes back in, sees something that they're not interested in playing around with. Botulus is pretty good against Turnpike. HQ looking pretty open right now. Hedge fund and a stock buyback puts a corp up to 20 credits and they drop another card into server 1. Max is fully capable of getting through this server. We'll just have to see if she wants to. Now we know the odds of it being the last Beal are somewhat lower, just because there are 2 Beals already on the table, although you do have to think it could just be an AR enhanced security. I feel like you have to run this server for fear that it might be. Max decides to run the open remote. It is a spin doctor, which is immediately rezzed and recurs news team and stock buyback into R&D. And this is what I mean about the news team. Now that news team is back into R&D and live, there's a chance that Max hits it again. But she's got a Stargate, which means potentially she could trash that out of R&D without accessing it. However, she makes a Stargate run onto R&D and the corp reses the ice in front of R&D, showing a funhouse. Definitely not an ice you want to pass through. Without considering the consequences of not only just taking the tag, but also giving Reality Plus the forward momentum on it. Fly on the Wall is scored, which gives the runner a tag. However, they can't immediately capitalize on it other than just taking the 2 credits from their ID ability. Max Stargates into R&D, breaks Funhouse with Black Orchestra. Okay. That's going to be more expensive the first time you do it, but less expensive than paying the 4 each other time. Shakes both tags that she had acquired manually. The Stargate run shows 15-minute Spin Doctor and Public Trail, I think is actually what that is. Decides to trash the Spin Doctor. Not really interested in the 15 minutes. The corp goes ahead and just drops the 15 minutes and scores it, putting them up to 4 agenda points. 1 global food initiative score away from winning. Now this is working out quite nicely for Reality Plus. These Stargate runs on R&D are rough, but each time Max has to take a tag from Funhouse, and Funhouse essentially generating Reality Plus 2 credits every time she does this, or rather the first time she does it per turn, but since Stargate can only be used once per turn anyway. She goes in, breaks Funhouse for the 3. Again, this is sort of the long haul strategy, installing Black Orchestra to do this. 3 credits, of course, cheaper than 4. Still have to take the tag on encounter, though. Reveals public trail, AR enhanced security, and another funhouse. This is kind of a tough choice. All 3 of these are ones you'd like to get rid of. Max goes ahead and targets AR enhanced security. Shakes the tag and drops a simul chip. I would be kind of tempted to get in here and grab this AR. The problem is we have a face down in archives, and this could be another news team. But I think at that point you just take it. You just take the news team. I wish she'd added that previous news team to her score area. I'm not 100% certain why she left it live. Interesting. Corp attitude adjustments revealing quantum predictive model and another copy of AR enhanced. So that's the... Wait, where... I must be off my rocker. What's going on here? Stargate trashed AR enhanced. Why is there no AR enhanced in the bin? Oh, because attitude adjustment can reveal cards from archives. So the Corp attitude adjustments, the AR enhanced out of archives and into R&D. Max goes in for another run, but sees another copy of Funhouse. Decides it's too rich for her blood. Jacks out. Now this sucks for the runner because it's very difficult to get into R&D now. Has to take 2 tags and pay 6 credits. But it does mean that 2 of the Corpse Funhouses have been spent, so to say, on R&D. Meaning the HQ and even the remote server are that much easier to get into, having no funhouses, as far as we know, installed on front of them. Max takes a turn off to day job for some extra cash. She has kind of ran at the end of her stack here, but we do see a single copy of labor rights, so I wouldn't be too surprised if she has 2 extra copies of labor rights in her hand. Corp triple advances a card in their new server, and it does end up being another fly on the wall. Corp gaining 2 credits off that. It kinda turns fly on the wall into a credit neutral score, sort of. I mean, you're 1 credit off at that point, but you also have to consider it also gives the runner a tag that they have to deal with. So losing out on that credit to give the runner a tag isn't really that bad at all. Max does have labor rights, shuffles in the copy of labor rights from archives, as well as a turning wheel and botulus. Apparently wants to get some turning wheel tokens. Now, Funhouse is a great piece of ice to run into to do that. You can just keep hitting Funhouse over and over and over again. But we have a rebirth, yep, into Omar. Suddenly that uniced archives is a very vulnerable server for the Corp. Corp just triple clicks an Ares. Now this is rough, but this Ares came pretty late. And you have to wonder, there aren't a ton of trashable cards that the Corp is really using here. So Ares's text may not be terribly relevant. They Omar... Now this is confusing. They Omar into HQ? But why? They can get into HQ for free. Well, okay, for a credit. Because they have to lose a credit when they hit Turnpike. I feel like you would want to Omar into R&D and just run HQ. But okay. They also do the trick we were talking about where they're bouncing into Funhouse to gain tokens. Corp ices archives and puts a new card in server 1. Now Omar needs to probably run server 1. And he can do this. He's got MK Ultra if he wants to break the turnpike. And then IP block is only scary if you use AI breakers, which Omar isn't. And ping is just a credit to get through. Okay, an Omar run on archives sees res on a turnpike. The MK Ultra does come out. Decides to just go ahead and overwrite the Stargate due to the MU spent by Botula, so that makes sense. There's probably not going to be any more Stargate runs. Omar goes into R&D, picks up an AR enhanced security, putting the score at 5-6. Little tense. Global food is all Omar would need to win the game, or perhaps the third Beal if it exists in the corpse deck. But on that same token, we've got this card in server 1. 3 clicks for the runner to do something about that. Now Omar's got the money to get in here. It's a simple what? Oh. Wait, no. No. This is fine. So you lose a credit on encountering Turnpike, and then you just pay the 3. So it's 4 credits to get through Turnpike, which is a little painful. But then, wait, where'd Paperclip go? We got rid of the Paperclip at some point. I didn't quite catch that. Looks like we're gonna boomerang the Turnpike. But why? You could just pay the 3. You already have the MK Ultra installed. And you're losing the one on the encounter anyway. Okay. Well, we're reinstalling... I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. It's like 3 credits no matter what. Boomerang's saving you 3 credits. No matter what happens here, now that I look at it. And since both ping and IP block are... I don't know, though. I think you could let... no, you can't... Probably. I just keep talking in fragments, I'm sorry. So, one strategy against IP block is you just let it fire. The problem is the math against IP block is funny when you're playing against Reality Plus, because that Trace 3 is almost kind of like a Trace 5, because they can just take the money if they tag you. So it gets a little harder to just let IP block fire, so I can understand, I guess, wanting to break that. I'm talking nonsense. Okay, the Corp does get into server 1, but it's just a spin doctor. Or rather, the runner gets into server 1, but it's just a spin doctor. The runner bounces 4 times off of Funhouse, gaining 4 more tokens on turning wheel. Sees no agenda in server 1, is not threatened or pressured in any way to take action. Now with 6 tokens, they could, potentially, bounce into Funhouse 2 more times on their next turn, and then do a full sweep of HQ. Hit all 5 cards with turning wheel if that's what they wanted. Alternatively, they could also just do a deep dig into R&D if they just wanted to take all these tags and not worry about them. The problem is we know the Corp runs Quantum Predictive Model. We don't see any scored or stolen, but we know the Corp uses that agenda due to attitude adjustment. So there's always the danger of ticking tags and then accidentally scoring the Corp the winning card. So R&D might not be an option. And the Corp installs another mystery card in server 1. I think at this point it has passed over to the runner. I think the runner needs to sweep HQ and then hit this card in server 1. Because if you sweep HQ... Oh. No, this is interesting, though. We're just doing a normal run, it looks like, on HQ. Now, this is going to lose a credit each time this happens due to Turnpike's on encounter, but it's probably fine. Okay, so we're not doing a full sweep of HQ, but that's fine. It ends up not mattering. 4 out of 5 apparently is enough because tomorrow's headline scored, and that's going to be the game. I guess it's kind of rough one way or the other, but I think if this was me, I would have bounced Funhouse twice, hit HQ, and then done the run on the server. Just so you get to see that extra card. But, I mean, this is fine too. We don't know how many agendas were in HQ. Oh. Well, we get to see... We know at least there was a high-profile target and a hard-hitting news. The Corp never quite had the money advantage to use hard-hitting news. Clearly the plan, though, was to high-profile target the runner if they ever had more than 2 tags. Although Max, with her few cards in hand, makes that a little easier. There was another labor rights in Omar's hand. We know, or in the stack. We know they recurred it. One of these cards in the stack was probably a boomerang. I don't really know what this Corp deck was trying to do, specifically. I know that generally they were trying to just create a situation where the runner took a lot of tags and lost a bunch of money. That's why we have things like Turnpike, Funhouse, Ping. The IP block is probably in here to... Well, first off, because of the synergy we were discussing earlier, where it's more difficult to let the trace fire on its own, but also probably in here for anti-AI. You ever look at the art in Turnpike? What is all that nonsense in the background? Oh well. But a lot of recursion in this Corp deck. Spin Doctor, preemptive action. I suppose this deck may be susceptible to ice trashing. So all that recursion is going to help you get your ice back. Public Trail helps that tag stick, I guess. Yeah, overall it just seems like the strategy was just give the runner a tag and high profile targeting them. I just don't see it being a very focused strategy. Alright, Sunny versus Precision Design. First turn of the game, the Corp installs 2 cards in a server and ices it. Sunny checks the server, hits a Hagen, bounces off pretty harmlessly. And the Corp goes down to 1 credit to do that. Even though they only have 2 link, Sunny plays Office Supplies and gains 4 credits off of that. Not a great move. No. Why would... I don't like that. think of it this way. If she had spent 1 click just gaining a credit, it's almost nearly as good as it was when she played Office Supplies. She had enough money to install Rizeki, to install data folding. I don't think it mattered. You didn't need to jump the gun on this Office Supplies. But okay, the Corp has to triple click. Well, they lost a card. Wait. Oh, okay. They scored a Luminal Transubstantiation and then clicked up for credits. Well, they seamless launched it because it's slightly cheaper. I see. They seamless launched, scored their transubstantiation, used their ID to put seamless launch back into their hand, then clicked up for 3 credits. Makes sense. Anyway, back over to Sunny's side of the table, there is another Rizeki. And another data folding installed. If you're going to use both data folding and Rizeki, this is definitely your best case scenario. To have 4 out of 6 of them installed by turn 3, that's insane. It really doesn't get any better than that. And the third Office Supplies? My goodness. Anyway, Office Supplies, the last 2 of them were used to draw cards. She decides after Office Suppliesing to check R&D, nothing there. There's a completely open HQ that might be a little tempting to check as well, though we're getting no forward momentum off of this as far as things like turning wheel tokens or virus counters or anything like that. She decides to draw again. Now, that might seem a little odd, except for the fact that, you know, Sunny does have a 50-card deck. It's a little tough to chew through it. Career fares out a global sec. That's not great. Career fairing the data folding, which is what she did turn earlier, makes a lot of sense. But career fairing global sec, I think that was done just to preserve the hand size, because she had 7 in hand, only 1 click. You miss a credit off the global sec, and really the reason I don't like this is, look at this. This right here. She has global sec security clearance, but she can just run the open R&D. There's no need right now to have global sec installed. It'll be good if the Corp ever decides to ice up R&D, but for now it's not really doing much for her. Now, the Corp on the previous turn did put a new card in server 1, still protected by this Hagen that Sunny does not currently have the ability to get through. However, that run on R&D triggers the ability to use White Hat, a Trace 3. The Corp pays 0 to increase the Trace strength, so Sunny pays a single credit, gets to see all the cards in HQ, Fairchild, Seamless Launch, Drafter, Border Control, Hedge Fund, and Off-World Office. She shuffles the agenda and the Fast Advance. Something about that doesn't seem right. I feel like you would want to shuffle the Border Control and the Fairchild in, and maybe run HQ, see if you can get that Off-World Office, since HQ is completely open. However, she makes a run on R&D, gets lucky, steals an Eco-Up project, has the money and the clicks to get that. Over to the Corp, they hedge fund and then ice up R&D to protect it from future runs. Seeing as how there are no longer any agendas in HQ. Now, it could be the reason that she white-hatted the Off-World Office into R&D is because she feels threatened by this Hagen remote. Felt like if the Corp installed that into server 1, she couldn't get in. Problem is, with 2 cards in here already, I wonder if one of them already isn't an agenda. It could be 2 upgrades, we don't know. So perhaps she was trying to prevent, the card from making its way into the remote. However, she drops her Security Nexus, a very, very strong card, but it needs quite a bit of money to be effective, as well as some link. Now, it does provide 1 link on its own, so we're up to 3 link against the Trace 5. We're getting 4 credits a turn from Rizeki and Data Folding. Again, it is insane how early she got these installed. They're going to pay off in dividends. Rizeki beginning to pay off by turn 5. The 5th turn after it's installed. Data folding the 6th turn after it's installed. We're already on turn 6. So this first Rizeki is definitely starting to pay off, as well as the first data folding. So we're starting to see some forward momentum on those cards. 2 new pieces of ice are on server 1, as well as a 3rd card. Looks like I was wrong, assuming that these first 2 cards were upgrades and this new card is an agenda or an asset. Looks like maybe shuffling in the off-world office was the right call. She does not feel comfortable contesting this triple iced remote. Kind of understand why. Runs R&D. Steals a Cyberdeck sandbox. The corp says, you know what, I'm not letting you in here again. Reses the ice in front of R&D. It is a gatekeeper. However, she's got security nexus. But the neat thing about security nexus is, even if you don't want to fight the corp's trace, because it looks like the corp boosted the security nexus trace strength by 2, she just bounces and takes a tag. She doesn't even have to let these gatekeeper subroutines fire. That's the beauty of security nexus. People oftentimes discount that. They're like, oh no, what if the corp pays into the trace and I can't break it? Well, that's totally fine. She just bounces and shakes the tags. Gets to see the ice. Gatekeeper loses its extra strength. The subroutines don't even fire. And the corp is down to 5 credits. Because they had to pay the 3 to res Gatekeeper, and 2 to boost the security nexus trace. Now the card in server 1 was advanced once by a Lacosta grid. That does not guarantee that it is an agenda, though. Could just be an asset. Could be 3 upgrades in here. Since Lacosta grid can place a token on any card. However, the corp is down to 5 credits. Sunny decides to overclock into this remote, which is very smart. Those 5 extra credits essentially letting her, guaranteeing that she can win the security nexus trace on at least 1 piece of ice. So one of 2 things is going to happen here. Either the corp doesn't res any of these pieces of ice and she just traces through the Hagen, or the corp loses what little money they have to res a second piece of ice, she traces through it and then just jacks out. Both are good situations for Sunny to be in. There's no res on the outermost. We're hitting the second unres piece of ice now. It is res, revealed to be a border control. This might be the end of Sunny's fun. She does security nexus trace. Corp predictably does not boost the trace strength. Sunny will just pay out the trace with overclocked money and then bounce off Hagen. And again, this is great because the corp is suddenly outside of hedge fund range. They're outside of, you know, your traditional economy cards as far as credits go. The only problem, and I should say it's really only a problem for the runner, the corp is very happy about this part, is this Lacosta grid is still ticking up just a little bit each turn. So we see a second advancement token put on the card in server 2. And a new remote created after clicking twice for credits. Now previously Sunny did drop a turning wheel. With a completely open HQ, she is incentivized just to run HQ a couple times. Hits that naked remote, it's a Rashida, she's very happy to trash that for a credit. Draws. Now with this turning wheel and this open HQ though, I feel like you're not afraid of snares, and even if you were, you had 3 cards in hand. You don't need to draw, you need to run HQ. But okay, we're gonna run Gatekeeper. Probably Security Nexus trace it, which is fine, I guess. Looks like there was a slight misclick here. Understandably, the corp isn't boosting this security nexus trace since they're only down to 3 credits, but Sunny still has to pay 2 into this, so it's not completely free for her. Gets into R&D, gets that token on turning wheel. Nothing special taken off the top of R&D. Again, I know it's overly picky, but this global sec security clearance still not relevant in this game. It's anti-synergistic if you want to run R&D to get turning wheel tokens. Now, if you just want to use a click to see what's on the top of R&D and then ignore it, that's one thing. But then she clicks to draw a card again. We have a completely open HQ. Seamless Launch is used on the card in Server 1. It is revealed to be an Ecowa project. 3 of those advancement tokens were placed for free, which is pretty nice for the Corp. And now here we go, card going into Server 1. Now, I obviously have no way to know whether or not that card was in HQ when I was suggesting that Sunny should just run HQ, but if it was, Sunny potentially could have prevented that. Now, she does lose a click here off of Global Sec to check R&D. Drops a DreamNet, which is nice. But again, DreamNet does not instantly pay for itself, so for the time being, it's actually losing Sunny some tempo. But she's allowed to do this because HQ is completely unprotected, and she has this drip economy coming in from Rizeki and data folding, which by this time at turn 9 has paid off in spades. She white hats. Corp can't really fight this trace. We see Fairchild, Hagen, Border Control, Seamless Launch. She shuffles Seamless Launch and Border Control into R&D, which I would agree with. But she still can't get into this remote server, and La Costa is just putting tokens on cards in the remote. But interestingly, the La Costa grid put a token on the second card in the remote, not the new one, which suggests that perhaps this isn't an agenda at all. Which means earlier when I said she should have ran HQ several times, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe there were no agendas in HQ at that point. At any rate, she knows... Now, wait, what are we... Okay, so we're running HQ. Oh, I see, okay. So we lost a click to look at the top of R&D again. Okay, so Global Sec is definitely helping at this point. And now we're running HQ, not because we think that there are agendas in here, but running HQ just to get turning wheel tokens, as well as triggering DreamNet. Now, after running HQ 3 times, she decides to go ahead and pay into the security trace, into Gatekeeper, and blows the 3 turning wheel tokens to access 3 cards, sees a Managarm, pays a 3 to trash that, trashes Rashida, and accesses an unforeseen card, but it's not enough. Apparently, there was an agenda in Server 1. Was that a fake out? I think it was a fake out. I think the Corp advanced the card in the middle of Server 1 so that the runner wouldn't be worried. It worked on me because I was like, oh, the Corp put an advancement token on the card, and the middle card, so the outermost card must not be an agenda, but it ended up being an agenda. So on their next turn, they put a token on it and triple clicked it for the Cyberdeck sandbox score. I think probably their plan previously was to La Costa it and then Seamless Launch to get 2 tokens and then just click for the last one. But they didn't have enough money, I don't think, on the last turn to triple click it. Let's see here. Yeah, they only had 2 credits, so they couldn't. Suddenly, they could have won the game on just 2 credits. Because Lacosta would have added 1 token, Seamless would have added 2, and then they could have just added the last one manually. But all of that was thwarted on the previous turn when the White Hat added Seamless Launch into R&D. So the Corp had to click up for credits, and they faked out the Lacosta advance by advancing the second card. Yeah. Okay, so I've gone back and forth on it so many times, but at this point, I can at least definitively say, yes, it would have been in Sunny's best interest to run HQ a couple times, because if the Cyberdeck Sandbox was in HQ during that time, she could have scored it. But she went for a deep run on R&D, which I kind of understand. She knew that the top card was Managarm Skunkworks and probably wanted to get in there to trash that. So she hit HQ twice. But she knew what the cards in HQ were, because she global sect the turn before, and the Corp manually drew that. So she knew what all the cards in HQ were. And due to the White Hat run earlier, she knew none of them were agendas. So those 2 runs in HQ were just for the Turning Wheel token and the DreamNet Fire. I don't know, man. If you have a Turning Wheel on the table and a completely open HQ, I say get into that HQ. The overclock run into the remote earlier was good, though. The Corp did win this, but Sunny could have just as easily won off of the Turning Wheel run into R&D. The real problem is she just didn't get any breakers. If she even uses them. We're on turn 11, so what should Rizeki pay out? Because you gotta think, it takes a click to install, 2 credits. So the turn you install it, you're down 4. Or you're down 3, rather. So it's not until the 4th turn that you actually get any money out of it. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this Rizeki essentially made her 8 credits, this first one. And this one made her 7, which is pretty good. And this data folding made her 7, and this one made her 6. Of course, she career fared the first one out, which just makes the math even better. So yeah, had a lot of drip econ. Some extremely efficient drip econ just due to the fact that they were drawn early. Just wasn't able to get into this remote. Fewer games I'm noticing. Kind of the initial buzz of the new cards have worn off a bit. I guess we can see if this is... Yeah, we're early enough here. Alright, same Sunny deck versus... Ascending to Orbit? Is that what that one called? No, just Earth Station. It's the single remote Wayland ID. Crisium grid. Oh, this is in HQ. For some reason, I thought Crisium was in the remote server. Still though, why would you Crisium HQ? I guess it would prevent DreamNet. And I guess it prevents Boomerang. Anyway, the servers have been iced. Jack Sinclair is here today. Nice synergy with Jackson Sinclair and DreamNet. Essentially, as long as there's an open server, Jack Sinclair and DreamNet read, gain a credit, and draw a card at the beginning of your turn. Now, whatever this ice is in the remote created by Wayland has been boomeranged. Which means that, presumably, Wayland needs something else protecting that server if they want to score out of it. However, they were able to score a SDS drone deployment. But that was before the Rezekis hit the table, apparently. Which means the SDS drone deployment did not trash any of Sunny's stuff. It was just scored out for points. That's okay, Wayland, I'm sure, is very happy to at least have 3 points on the table. 3-0, 2 Rezekis already on the table as mentioned before from Sunny. Those will pay off presumably around turn 9 is when we'll start seeing forward momentum on those. Corp sprints to draw 3 and shuffle 2 into R&D. Hedge funds, and then reinforces that remote with another piece of ice. Still, unfortunately, has to leave archives open. Sunny Gachapons at the beginning of her turn removes another Gachapon, as well as office supplies and sure gamble. Wow, feels like she doesn't need money or draw? Interesting. Or perhaps the other cards that Gachapon revealed were just too valuable. However, Jack Sinclair and Earthrise going to draw her 3 cards at the beginning of her turn. Ah, and finally we see a breaker. Mayfly. Mayfly, good for a single run, of course. Decides to overclock into HQ, sees Winchester, double trace because it's on HQ. Sorry, triple trace because it's on HQ. The runner just says to go ahead and fire it? Okay. But what? Oh, of course. Sunny has 2 Link. No, this makes a lot more sense now. So she's going to use the overclock money to pay into the traces, thus preserving her Mayfly. Okay, so the first trace, no boost, no boost. No boost. So, yeah, there was no boost on any of these traces. So, essentially, it was a trace 1, a trace 2, a trace 1, and all of that money came from overclock. So, she gets into HQ, sees a firewall, hits the Crisium grid, decides to pay the whopping 5 to get rid of that. that turns on cards like DreamNet and Boomerang if the card in front of HQ was boomeranged, because if the run is successful, you can shuffle Boomerang back into your stack. But was it worth it to trash that Chrysium Grid? What else do you need a successful run into HQ for? I suppose it also activates the white hats. We'll have to see if that ends up being relevant. Anyway, the Corp decides to install a card in server 1 and double advances it back over to the runner. Security Nexus finally hits the table, and a triple click for credits replenishes a lot of that money that was spent on the Nexus. Sunny has no additional link from extra cards right now, so the trace is 5 against her link of 3. Yeah, and so here we go. The card in server 1 was just an NGO front, and another upgrade is put into the root of HQ, and if this is another Chrysium Grid, you do kind of wonder, like, was it worth it for Sunny to trash that original one? What is she fighting against the Chrysium Grids for? The Corp face-up installs City Works and then Dedication Ceremonies it. Sunny jacks Sinclair's into R&D, and she's safe to do this because of the Security Nexus. The Corp reses Ballista. Security Nexus bypasses that for 2 credits on a boost on the Trace. Gets into R&D. Whatever it is, she can't steal it, doesn't want to trash it, or can't trash it. Her turn begins. She gets all that draw and money from DreamNet and Rozeki. Puts Turning Wheel on the table for future synergy on those central runs. Unfortunately, the Corp does just go ahead and score the City Works. Now, theoretically, shouldn't Sunny have contested this? Because now the Corp is on game point. It wouldn't have been that hard for Sunny to drop to 5 and get through this server. She had Security Nexus. She had this Ice Boomerang. Theoretically, I feel like she should have been able to get in there, but what do I know? She jacks Sinclair's into HQ. Lets all the subroutines fire, pays into them. I'm assuming there's no boost on the side of the Corp, so essentially she pays 4 credits to fight all these traces. Gets an HQ, hits the Chrysium Grid, which is res. She pays the 5 to trash it, sees a firewall in HQ again, and then just clicks up for credits. And again, I don't know if trashing these Chrysium Grids is really doing much for her. It's literally just deactivating DreamNet. Now, one thing I will say is it's costing the Corp 3 credits every time they res these Chrysium Grids. So the Corp isn't getting to do this for free. The Corp is down 6 credits because of this. They sprint, install a card, and click for a credit. Sunny Jackson clears right back into HQ. Again, though, this isn't free. Pays 1. Oh, I'm doing the math completely wrong. No, she's not paying 4. She's paying 1 credit because of the extra link from Security Nexus. That's a huge difference. Okay, no. Letting Winchester fire makes all the sense in the world then. She goes ahead and runs into the remote. It's revealed to be Rashida. Trashes that happily for 1 credit. Goes into R&D. Does use the Security Nexus fire. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't catch that. Her link is 3, not 2. And Winchester is practically blank. That is so sad. Anyway, gets into R&D. Whatever it is, isn't stealable. Or perhaps it's an SDS that she doesn't steal, although at this point I think you would just trash your Mayfly. And so even though the Corp is up to 6 points, Sunny's in a pretty commanding position. She can use Mayfly, anytime she needs to get into a server for realsies. And in the meantime, HQ is a credit to get through. Security Nexus, 2 credits, as long as the Corp isn't fighting the Traces, which at 3 credits the Corp isn't going to. Jack Sinclair getting into HQ for a credit, and then gaining a credit and a draw off DreamNet. Yeah, overall there's a lot of lockdown happening here. Sunny does hit SDS drone deployment, does pitch the Mayfly. Sure gambles to bounce up money-wise. The only issue now is that potentially the Corp could install a 3rd piece of ice in this remote and then theoretically score out. They need money to do that. It's going to be quite a few turns before the Corp gets the money to do that. At best, the next turn, like, theoretically they could double-click for 2 credits in hedge fund, except all the hedge funds are already in the bin. Sunny Security Nexus is through the Ballista on R&D. It sucks for her that she's not getting anything off of R&D, but she is getting turning wheel counters. So it's something. I don't know if this is necessarily the right call. She, on turn 11, installs the 3rd Rezeki. That's not going to pay off until... You know, she's not going to get any money off of that until, what? 11, 12, 13, 14, till turn 15. But these first few Rezekis have obviously paid for themselves and then some. She's making use of that global sec security clearance to look into R&D. Decides to Jack Sinclair into archives. Apparently the single credit that Winchester costs is not something she's willing to give up right now. Because she's looking to contest this server 1, runs it, sees a border control. That's all fine and well. The problem is, she'll security nexus past this, hit whatever this... Oh, but the Corp doesn't have the money to res it. Yeah, so Sunny's getting in here. That res on the border control basically just costs Sunny 2 credits, and nothing more. Sees a clearinghouse in server 1. Doesn't spend the 3 to trash it. And that makes a lot of sense because the Corp needs to advance this for it to do anything. The Corp is down at 0 credits. So even if the Corp advanced this, like they took the time to double advance this, even triple advance it in the hopes of dealing some meat damage on the next turn, Sunny's got a whole turn to respond to that. I doubt the Corp wants to do that, and by leaving it in here, if the Corp wants to put another asset or an agenda here in server 1, then they have to reveal that they've done so. Something I cannot even believe I overlooked, and the reason I realize now that Sunny has been contesting these Crisium grids is the ID ability on Earth Station. Because on the other side of Earth Station's ID is the one where it costs, I think, an extra 6 credits to run the remote. But then it says, if the run on HQ is successful, you flip the ID. So that would explain why Sunny was so eager to trash these Crisium grids. So I take it all back. Sunny's been doing everything correctly. The Corp limping along on 3 credits. It's kind of just a matter of time before Sunny picks up the remaining agendas. She's building up turning wheel tokens. She has R&D locked down because of global sec. She's gaining 4 credits at the start of her turn, plus an extra 2 from daily cast, and a card draw for free due to Jack Sinclair on the completely open archives. HQ is a simple credit to get into, although, admittedly, if Earth Station reveals this side of their ID, it's another credit. Corp really has no recourse right now other than just to triple click. Look at this, they're having to throw away their ice. Firewall, Mausolus goes in the bin. They just don't have any money. Realistically, I think this is kind of a problem maybe with the Corp deck. There just doesn't seem to be enough money in this Corp deck. Either that or they're just not drawing it. They drew all 3 copies of their hedge funds. And the NGO is good. Obviously, NGO is going to help you earn a bit of money. And they lost the Rashida because Sunny trashed it. But there's just not a lot of economy to support Chrysium advancing agendas and installing and rezzing ice. And imagine if you were playing against a criminal and they were diversion of fundsing you. You would have even less money than you do now. Now, Sunny's going into HQ on a regular run, it looks like. Again, it's just a single credit for her to do this, fighting these traces. And then another credit because of Earth Station's ID ability. Turning wheels to see 3 cards in total hits City Works and 2 government subsidies. There's where all of our corpse money is. So they made the mistake of dropping too low. And they have not been able to play both of their subsidies. Oh, that's painful. 2 subsidies. That's 10 credits just sitting there. The Corp draws twice, but they need to... I feel like they need to click for credits. I know it sucks having an HQ that's practically porous, but if they don't get the money to play these subsidies, they're not getting enough forward momentum to do practically anything. So off the Jack Sinclair run into archives, Sunny White Hats revealing all the cards in HQ. No agendas. Yeah, there's no agendas in HQ. There was no need for the Corp to protect HQ like that. They should have just clicked up for credits so they could have government subsidied. But okay, so understandably, seeing that the Corp's weakness right now is their lack of funds, Sunny shuffles both of the subsidies into R&D. Now, what turn are we on? We're on turn 15, so technically this Rizeki has paid off for a credit. But then data folding is dropped. Every time I complain about her installing these cards, they end up paying off. So I always end up being wrong. And I know I just keep doing this, so I sound like a broken record, but I feel the need to point out this card is not going to pay off until, what, turn 20? But that's what I said about this Rizeki, and this Rizeki started paying out, so I don't know. Guess Sunny's in it for the long haul. A new card goes into server 1. Who knows what it is? It's possible it's this clearinghouse. Ah, but wait. No, we know this card here in the server is another clearinghouse, because Sunny didn't trash it, which means the card that was put into Server 1 is actually an upgrade. The Corp goes ahead and flips their ID ability, which means if Sunny wants to get into that remote, it's going to be 6 credits, or they need to make a run into HQ first to flip the ID. She security nexuses into R&D, clearly not even concerned about whatever shenanigans are going on over here in Server 1. And I think that's wise, because she knows it's not an agenda. So the run on R&D shows an NGO front. She decides to go back into R&D. Did she global sec this? No. Just pays it outright with Shrike. 4 credits to get through Ballista. Pays 2 tokens off turning wheel to see 2 cards. Hits an Urtica Cipher? What? That's bonkers. What's an Urtica Cipher doing in this deck? Okay, so the first card was an Urtica Cipher, which she trashes for 2, and then the second card was something that was a non-agenda. It technically could have been SDS, and she chose not to steal it, but that, of course, wouldn't make any sense. That's a pretty spicy include, that Urtica Cipher. And I guess maybe you could catch someone off guard if you advanced it and they ran it, but I feel like that's a bit greedy. Okay, so the card in Server 1 is revealed to be a Lacosta grid, which means that this clearinghouse is getting free tokens on it, which is pretty nice, but it's not enough to scare Sunny out of her win condition, which is just keeping on looking for that last agenda point in R&D. Clearinghouse right now is only going to deal 1 to 2 damage. I guess you choose the order of triggers as the corpse, so it could deal 2 damage on the corpse next turn. So he goes into R&D, hits a Rashida, trashes it, goes back in, breaks with Shrike, hits another Rashida? Double Rashida. All 3 Rashidas in the bin. And she drops her last daily cast. I believe that's the last one. No, there might be a third one. I keep looking at office supplies. Alright, finally a piece of ice covers archives, but it's probably too little too late. Sunny doesn't really need those free runs on archives right now. She could just as easily jack Sinclair into R&D. She decides to jack Sinclair into HQ. Alright, Afshar is shown. Code gates. We don't have a decoder yet. So she'll have to security nexus this if she wants to get through it. And the nice thing about security nexus into Afshar is because you're bypassing it, you don't have to worry about the condition that the runner can only break one of the subroutines while it's on HQ. You kind of lose 2 either way though, because right now 2 credits needs to be paid into security nexus. Hits a Winchester, plays the song and dance that we've discussed previously, where she only needs to pay 1 credit to get through these traces. Wait, what happened here? Approaches Winchester and jacks out? Apparently doesn't want to get into HQ. Okay. Makes a run on archives. But why not go into HQ? you would flip the ID, see a card in HQ, although at this point she might know what most of them are. But she's going to contest archives, that's fine. She's got an Amakua, so the corp either has to res this ice and lose, like, go down very low on money, or just let Sunny get Amakua tokens. And either they can't or won't res this ice on archives. So Sunny just decides to hit archives 3 times, which certainly makes sense. It's going to put the corp in a rather difficult spot, since they almost have just too many things going on right now that they have to cover. And now with 4 tokens, Ballista can just be broken with a single credit. Two cards are accessed off the top of R&D, neither of them the game-winning Agenda. A 3rd token placed on the clearinghouse on server 1. But it's just not going to be enough. At the point where clearinghouse threatens its 6th token is the point where Sunny just goes in and trashes it. Which means that Waylon probably wants to use it if it goes up to 5 tokens. Unless the plan is to drag Sunny through this server. But again, there's just too much going on. The problem really is this Amakua. Because even if the corp forces Sunny to use this boomerang, she's got the Amakua as a backup. So the corp would need to somehow find the time to purge, get enough money to res both these pieces of ice, and use the clearinghouse. It's just not all going to happen. There's too many holes. Even this Jack Sinclair run into HQ, Afshar bypassed. Oh. Interesting. Oh no. Oh no. The corp bites back, shows that it has teeth, boosts the trace strength of the 2nd subroutine on Winchester, since the HQ subroutine appears at the end, and trashes Sunny's security nexus. That's insanely relevant. There's 2 security nexuses already in the bin. Does Sunny have a 3rd one? Now, she of course has her Amakua, but now there's a real possibility of the corp purging. Problem is, though, they're still down to 2 credits, probably not enough money to actually res this relevant ice. I don't know if I agree with that. The corp decides to border control to end the run, but Sunny's just going to go right back in here. So essentially they threw border control away just to make Sunny lose a click. She gets into server 1, trashes the clearinghouse, trashes the La Costa. She knows this is kind of her last turn to have free reign over the board state, since she lost that security nexus. So she sweeps server 1 and goes into R&D on that last click, just trying to get something. The corp triple clicks for credits, which is telling. It means that the ice on archives probably can't be resed for 4 credits or less. No, I shouldn't say that. Could just be there was nothing better to do with that last click. Sonny Jackson clears into the empty server 1, tempting the corp to res the remote ice, but I think both players know that the corp doesn't want to do that. So it's an interesting situation that the game is entered into. Sonny essentially has one more turn here. Assuming that the ice on archives can be rezzed for 5 credits or less. It's very possible that the corp just purges next turn. Rezzes the ice on archives, and suddenly Sonny has to get in to these servers the old-fashioned way. But I don't know, Sonny has a lot of free reign here. She runs R&D, hits a clearinghouse, pays 3 to trash it, runs back in, and every time she gets into R&D, it's just a credit to get in. Accesses 2 cards by spending turning wheel tokens, and still does not see the game-winning agenda. And here comes the purge. And all because of that Winchester trace. It's almost... I mean, I would have made the mistake myself. It was almost like she took it for granted. Just saw this and thought, the corp will never boost this. It's just a credit to get in. Forgetting, of course, that the corp can choose to boost just one of the subroutines if they only needed one to fire. She runs into archives, it's revealed to be a Mausolus. Mausolus fires, discounting the res cost by 1, dealing a net damage. Ooh. Now, if the corp has a relevant Sherman, or what am I saying? A relevant barrier, losing Sherman might be a big deal. If Sonny doesn't have the Amakua tokens... Wait, what? Whenever you expose a card or access cards and do not steal a trash... I didn't realize an empty remote counted. Okay, so she's generating Amakua tokens by running this empty remote. I thought because the remote was empty, no tokens would be acquired, but technically the trigger is access cards, and I believe even though there's no cards in here, it counts as the access cards phase. So until the corp can res this piece of ice here, Sonny still has an in. And she uses that to her advantage. She pops up to 4 virus tokens on Amakua, enough to get through Ballista, and just is looking again for that last agenda. She white hats, has plenty of money to do this. There's no way the corp can fight the trace. So we're gonna get to see what's in HQ. No agendas. At this point, that's a little frustrating, because you, as the runner, are now forced to decrease the agenda density in R&D, because you have to shuffle something in, don't you? Oh no, you can't. It says may choose. No, but the runner does indeed choose border control and clearinghouse. Shuffles those back into R&D. It does mean that R&D is a fresh access now. Ah, finally. Wow. Turning wheels, and it looks like the second card is government takeover. What an intense game. What turn were we on? Turn 22. Alright. This data folding paid off. My goodness, though. That last government takeover was just like pulling teeth to get. You kind of see why, though. There's a lot of high point agendas in this deck. 3, 6, 9, 12, 18. It's practically the full suite. Not very much ice, though. Whoa. We really are going to get to see most of the deck here. Well, I can't really say that there wasn't much ice. The Corp just didn't get to install 4 of them. The board state would look very different if there were 4 additional pieces of ice on the table. So it looks like the plan was to perhaps punitive the runner at some point. Of course, that was impossible to do once the runner got up to 6 points. But punitive is a money game. And I don't see a ton of economy in this deck. We know that they had 3 government subsidies. And to their credit, they were not able to fire off a single Rashida. So assuming they run the 3rd government subsidy, that's 3, 6, 9 plus 15. That's 24 credits that they didn't have access to. Which very well would have made the difference. Anoetic Void. What's Anoetic Void doing in here? Typically you see that paired with Managarm Skunkworks. But okay, I think I see. The Crisium grids make sense. Especially in Earth Station. But I think the Corp kind of didn't have an out. I mean, what do they do once the runner scores 6 points? They can't punitive them. Are they going to manually score their government takeover? I don't see any tag methods here. Also, we saw all the cards in their hand. There are no tag methods in their hand either. There's this kind of pseudo synergy with Lacosta Grid and Clearinghouse. But I feel like in order to make that threatening, you would need to have the money to manually advance Clearinghouse, in addition to actually having some ice on the server, which again, they weren't able to get because Sunny was trashing a lot of their Rashidas and shuffling their government subsidies back into their R&D. But maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. There was also NGO in here. It's probably unfair of me to be critical of their financial situation. Oh well. An interesting deck at the very least. Coming into this one a little bit late. Turn 7. That's okay. Oh, looks like this is the front page Cabanesa Wu deck. Based on our time spent studying it. Oh, the rebirth was lost. Why did we lose a rebirth? Was there meat damage? Huh. I'm not sure why. The clot in the bin makes sense. Why is the rebirth in the bin? Oh well. Anyway, looks like Reality Plus is the Corp ID. Takes a tag from Turnpike, it would seem. No, where did we get this tag from? Oh. From Better Citizen program. Okay, so Better Citizen program was scored previously. Which means anytime the runner plays a run event Oh no, or installs an icebreaker program. We know how this Combination Wu deck functions. It functions by installing an icebreaker program every turn once it gets set up. That means every turn Combination is going to take a tag, and Reality Plus is either going to get to draw 2 cards or gain 2 credits. They even have already put Wu into a situation where they're getting hard-hitting news. And because hard-hitting news happens on the corpse turn, they get to take advantage of their ID ability again, effectively discounting the cost of hard-hitting news by 2 credits, which is huge. Wu is not in a great spot at all. She's got a lot of cards on the table, but the problem is her whole strategy is essentially countered by this single agenda. The turn gets passed over to her, but she's got a tough set of choices to make. Especially with no agenda scored. Maybe if she was on game point, or at least close to game point, you can maybe play a little reckless, but I mean, look at that. She installs Euler, but has to take another tag. She's just tagged at this point. Assuming, of course, that Reality Plus runs something like High Profile Target or Boom. It's just a matter of time before Wu dies. She installs Euler, runs R&D, no res on R&D. Now she is generating turning wheel tokens, is up to 4. Simul chips misdirection. Okay. Okay, there's some light at the in this tunnel. Oh, fancy. I never even thought of doing that. She simul chips misdirection onto flame out. Okay. Anyway, shakes all of those tags essentially just for 2 credits, I believe, and 2 clicks because of the flame out money. I never would have thought of putting misdirection on a flame out. I don't think that situation has ever come up. It's a neat trick, but the problem is it's just not enough. Corp scores out their second agenda, Bologna, making that credit neutral. They're up to 5 points. Assuming they don't score something like a 15 minutes news, it's a game point. And here we are, Kushik. A nice move, but it's a run event, so they have to take another tag to do this. Sees a turnpike on R&D, loses a credit on encounter. I suppose it could be broken with ramen. Ramen. Man, I kind of want some ramen right now. Sees 5 cards on R&D. Unfortunately, not really any of them being ones that you want to see. The Bologna, definitely, but the problem is Wu just doesn't have the money to steal it. Instead of accessing Keegan Lane, doesn't trash the Keegan Lane. Makes another run into R&D. Now the cool thing about this is Cuban is actually making Wu money. 2 credits every time she passes the turnpike. The problem is she's taking a tag to do this. And she's losing a credit due to turnpikes on encounter. I think she's playing tag me at this point. Unless she wants to do another fancy trick to recur misdirection. She runs into HQ, blows 2 turning wheel tokens in the hopes of scoring 2 3-pointers. Hits an AR enhanced security. Okay, well, that's a point. Hits a news team. Says, news team, like I care about tags right now. Trashes the news team and trashes an NGO front. Now, does Reality Plus have the tag punishment in hand? Looks like not. They drop twice, and they drop a hedge fund. Wu has another turn to potentially find the last 2 agenda points, or last 2 agenda cards. The problem is, Corp's not making this easy. They trash her turning wheel for 2 credits and a click. Wu, with not much to lose, and a turnpike that can't really keep her out, and is actually generating her a credit every time she passes through it. She just runs into R&D. Whatever's on the top of R&D can't be interacted with. Decides to try her luck getting into HQ. Doesn't see anything. Draws and diesels. Has 8 tags. We really are at this point just waiting for the tag punishment, although there are quite a few cards still in R&D. Reality Plus is a 40 card ID, but if you just count the cards on the table right now, I believe this Corp decided to put in a few more cards than the normal 44. Got 30 in R&D, 5 in hand, so that's 35, plus 10 in archives, so it's 45. 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51? Am I counting that wrong? That seems wrong. Oh, 52, 53, 54. So it's a 54. 54? Did I do the math wrong on that? 45, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. No, it's a 54 size deck out of Reality Plus. That's a lot of cards. Could be why they're having trouble finding their tag punishment. Now, funnily enough, Authenticator is put in front of R&D, but I don't know why the Corp did this, because it's not doing anything. Because you can just take a tag when you encounter Authenticator to bypass it. And I'm pretty sure that's just what Wu did. Yeah. So, installing Authenticator there was useless. The difference between 9 tags and 10 tags is irrelevant. Corp standard procedures. Names event. Sees no events in the runner's hand, so gains no money from the use of that card. Wu understandably just decides, you know, I'm going into R&D, I'm finding something. Since apparently the Corp isn't punishing me for having 11 tags. Corp decides to trigger their ID ability and draws 2 cards. We see the second news team. 2 news teams in the bin. Wu going back in, hoping to get lucky. I'm just tickled by the fact that she's making money while doing this. Up to 15 tags. That's 30 meat damage. If high profile target is used. So that's 2 cards off R&D, news team and an unseen card. Decides to go into HQ, and now this makes sense because Reality Plus drew 2 cards. One of them could be an agenda. Hits a Spin Doctor, trashes that. But looks like it's game. There it is. Boom. It's a good example of a game where just because you're tagged doesn't mean the game's over. You see a lot of people, especially newcomers, get really frustrated when they get tagged. Sometimes they'll even immediately concede. But, you know, Wu played it out. Yeah, it was unlikely that she would win, but she still tried. Did things that made a lot of sense. In hindsight, it's possible that she could have ran HQ several times and accessed the boom and trashed it, but she had no reason to think or even know if the corp ran boom. If the corp instead ran a high-profile target, then it wouldn't matter. It looks like my cat woke up. Hi, Cookie. I can't pet you right now. Alright. Yeah, that was a fun game. The runner tried. Didn't make it, but I think, you know, Wu was making good choices given the uphill battle she was looking at. Acme. Dirty NBN ID itself versus Lat. Lat's a humble guy. He doesn't boast game-changing ID abilities or broken combos. He just wants to draw a card, you know? Sit around with his extra link. Already Acme's getting set up, daily quest generating them 3 credits a turn, and Spin Doctor shows itself. Potentially could be an opportunity to run this Spin Doctor since there's only 1 card in the archives, although perhaps that's what the corp wants. Leaving it on the table like that, although perhaps not. Regardless, Lat decides to ignore that. Gets a bunch of money. Interestingly, they VR-cationed on click 1, so they lost the click. And then they sure gambled and dirty laundry. Look at that, they do that again. They're VR-cationing on their first click. I mean, on some level it kind of makes sense. If you were going to spend that click to draw anyway, then I guess it's not the end of the world. It's just definitely losing you value. And we have a lot going on the corpse side of the table. We have a remote created with a single piece of ice protecting it and 2 cards behind it, as well as a card in a naked server 4 with 2 advancement tokens on it. Could just be an NGO front, could be an agenda. We don't know. Acme tends to like nasty pieces of ice on the outside of server. So you're gonna expect things like Data Ward, Hydra. Is Pachinko still a thing? Another new card is put into a remote and double advance, and Lat says, you know what, I've had enough of that. I'm checking what that is. It is a Bologna. He pays the 5 to steal it. The card in server 4 is an NGO front. Good instincts coming out of Lat. Very good instincts. Read that the card, the second one installed in double advance, was a little fishy. And you'll notice that Lat has this Ika installed. And that is presumably in anticipation of the Hydra. Now the Corp has a ton of money, but Lat is no slouch himself at 21. Which means that while the Corp might be able to make a hard-hitting news stick, it wouldn't do them much good. Lat would either let the trace fire and shake the tags, or just fight the trace, depending on what it was. Lat drops an SMC for presumably future runs against ice. Oh, was this falsified credentials used? Did we get any information from this? Did I miss this? No, falsified was just discarded. However, attitude adjustment reveals 2 degree mills from HQ, which get shuffled back into R&D. Lat decides that they're going to go ahead and get the ball rolling, overclocks into HQ, hits an Afshar, which is interesting. Why would Acme run an Afshar? There's no synergy there with the ID ability. Although I suppose if Acme's whole goal is to make the runner lose money and win a hard-hitting news trace, Afshar makes a certain level of sense. It's cheap to res, cheap-ish to res, and then the runner's almost always losing money when they hit it. Wait, it's a Chief Slee deck? Oh my goodness. Many a corpse have tried to make Chief Slee work, and many a corpse have failed. Let's see what actually happens here. So whenever an encounter with a piece of ice ends, place 1 power counter on Chief Slee for each unbroken subroutine on the encountered piece of ice. Macrophage, a perfect combination for Chief Slee, since most of the time, if you're not running viruses, you just let all of Macrophage's traces fire, because it's prohibitively expensive to break. And suddenly the Afshar makes sense, because you can only break one of the subroutines on Afshar, which is why Chief Slee already has a single power counter on it. Once you get up to 5 counters, you can click once for a whopping 5 meat damage. The problem is, in most Chief Slee decks, Slee just gets trashed before she can do anything. So, the runner decides to go ahead and let Macrophage fire. Perhaps because they're not afraid of Chief Slee. Maybe this is only click 1. Maybe they want to run the Chief Slee server next next click. Chief Slee is up to 5 subroutines now. Lat gets an HQ and sees a what? Approaches HQ. Oh my goodness, accesses another Chief Slee in HQ. Runs R&D. Oh my goodness, this is madness. This is madness. The synergy on this is amazing. Slot machine. Slot machine subroutines are frequently not broken because they're not relevant. But if they're not broken, Slee still gets a counter. Anyway, Lat hits R&D and then hits Archives, suggesting that Apocalypse is coming. Indeed it is. So in spite of the fact that Acme's deck here is a beautiful, beautiful thing, pulling synergy out of cards that I never would have expected. Unfortunately, the runner just says, get rid of that. Get rid of all those cards. I don't want to see them. Throw them all away. Corp puts a piece of ice in front of R&D, sort of signifying that maybe there aren't any agendas in HQ. And the game continues. Aesop's Pawn Shop dropped by Lat to sell off these face-down cards. And while that was certainly a good move by Lat, we do have to look at the credit counts. That really didn't cost the Corp anything, but it cost Lat quite a bit of money. So the credit count is 27 to 12 now. He's definitely in range of being hard-hitting news due to the differential. And Acme is wasting no time setting back up again. 3 pieces of ice on the table, 2 remotes. Jeez. That being said, Lat is right back up to 23 credits. Has a daily cast and a telework contract on the table. Gonna have no trouble matching the Corp's credit count. Corp goes ahead and scores their first agenda, a tomorrow's headline guaranteed tag on score or steal. We'll have to see if Lat remembers that. He does. Diesels drops an Angolo and shakes the tag. Looks like he might have snuck a telework in there as well. Telework is pretty good, isn't it? It's just that unlike liberated accounts, you can't get all the money off of it all at once. Looks like there's going to be a slight pause as our runner has to AFK for a moment. So what are we looking at here? Nobody runs just one copy of Apocalypse. And yeah, we don't really see... Apocalypse is only 3 pips. We don't see any other influence in the bin, so we have no reason to think, aside from this Harbinger, which is only 1. Oh, wait, no, this one's 2. Lat has 15 influence, right? Yeah, he's a normal runner. So you think 9 from the Apocalypses leaves him with 6 left over. What, maybe like 2 falsifieds and 2 harbingers? Maybe. Regardless, he almost certainly runs a second copy of Apocalypse, maybe the third. Which means his goal is probably not really to win, but just to be able to Apocalypse again anytime the Corp threatens anything dangerous. The thing is, though, money is really no object for both sides of the table. Which means that Lat generally has to think that the Corp can res all of this ice. The thing is, though, if either of these pieces of ice are code gates, Lat can get in for another apocalypse easy. Okay, looks like he's gonna run the face down remote. You can see if the Corp wants to res this piece of ice. Really just makes sense to res. It's going to be a 6 credit to 6 credit fight. 6 credits to res, 6 credits to break. Lat pays the 6, wants to see what's back here. Chief Slee resed. Oh my goodness. This man is a genius. Of course Endless Eula would not fire, or sorry, not be broken if the runner chose to pay into it with no breakers. Meaning Chief Slee would get all of those power counters. The problem is, though, ultimately, this is the issue with Chief Slee decks in general. There's just no chance for poor Slee to fire. And something else that has me scratching my head is this IP block is the first piece of ice we've seen in the entire deck that synergizes with Acme's ability. And even then, the synergy isn't amazing. It just gets an end the run. I mean, it's good, but Acme doesn't synergize with Endless Eula. It doesn't synergize with Slot Machine, Macrophage, Afshar. You could run the same exact strategy in another ID so far, and it really wouldn't be that different. A card goes behind the Endless Eula and is double advanced. And this is good on the Corp's part. The Corp needs to incentivize drawing Lat through this Eula as often as possible. It's expensive for Lat to keep going through it. The first time, it's equal, right? Both sides have to pay 6. But every additional time, the Corp is paying nothing extra, and Lat has to pay another 6 just to get through. He decides a falsified credential and guesses asset. He is correct. The card in Surface 6 is just an NGO front, which is good for him. It's a little frustrating that the Corpse Ruse is gone now, but it's another falsified credential that the Corp doesn't need to worry about. Again, the Corp has plenty of money here. The Regolith mining license. You know, just extra money whenever they want it. And Ice on Archives, that makes a lot of sense. Anticipating the future Apocalypse play. Puts another card behind that Endless Eula. Presumably Lat does not run the third falsified credential, so he'll either have to get through the server if he wants to see what it is, or he'll just have to let it be. So he decides to run HQ on an unresed ice. It shows itself as a data ward. Very nasty piece of ice to run into against Acme. Lat has to pay the 3. Well, he could take a tag. Holy mackerel. Again, the wild synergy here between Slee and Data Ward. Data Ward has a ridiculous number of subroutines. that were not broken. Therefore giving Slee 4 tokens. Without that 5th token, Slee isn't threatening anything. So Lat has plenty of time to decide how he wants to approach this. He simply clicks up for a few credits, drops a paperclip out of his hand into the heap. Second piece of ice is installed in front of server 6. This might be greedy. It depends. It depends on how Lat responds to this. The problem with this ice being over here is we know Lat runs Apocalypse, which means if he can get into these 3 centrals, he's just going to blow up the whole board. So Overclock is played into R&D. Paperclip dropped using Overclock money. And so that's going to break that award for 7 credits. It's so expensive. Runs the card, or runs the ice on archives, and yeah, unfortunately, this is what's going to happen. With it just being an IP block, Lat is going to be able to pay the 3 with paperclip here, pay the 3 with paperclip on the IP block in front of HQ, and have enough money left over to Apocalypse. Which is why I think the Corp should have installed this piece of ice onto Central. It would have been like if they had just installed it in front of Archives or even HQ, it would have been enough. Well, then again, Lat may have allowed IP block to fire, taking the tag. Well, no, they had to fight the tag, otherwise IP block would gain its subroutine back. Yeah, I think the ice should have been put on the Central. Anyway, the second Apocalypse hits. That sounds funny, out of context. However, the Corp is holding 2 Spin Doctors in hand for just such an occasion. Drops both of them, reses them, and shuffles in... What do we grab here? A data ward, 2 data wards, an Afshar, and a slot machine. So a lot of ice coming back. Even the runner admits that the double Spin Doctor was a good recovery. Oh my goodness. And a preemptive action played as well. I missed that. Anyway, while it may have been a good move to recur all those cards, Corp is a sitting duck with nothing on the table. Lat runs R&D, doesn't see anything, runs HQ, hits a degree mill. Is happy to shuffle Ngolo and Paperclip, which I believe were face down, into R&D. Face down due to Apocalypse. Degree mill almost sort of helping the runner there. Conduit dropped by Lat. Very good time to do it. Hits R&D. Is this going to get to see 2 cards there with a virus token staying? Oh, no. We're doing a 3rd run. 1, 2, 3rd new card. Nothing. Those virus tokens don't go away. So the Corp really needs to do something about that. Ooh, especially with Rashida drawing through all of those cards that Lat just saw in R&D. Presumably, though, they're going to draw some ice. Indeed, R&D sees a piece of ice put in front of it. A new card in server 11. What would that be? Just a Rashida? Kind of an obvious Rashida. Corp is holding on to their last click, deciding what they want to do with it. I guess the problem is, what do? Do you ice the Rashida, or do you ice a Central? They decide to ice a Central. They're anticipating the third apocalypse. The runner just clicks up for 4 credits. I don't like that. I think that should have been a click for a credit and a check on server 11. Although, if he had done so, it would have been a waste, because it was just a ginger grid. A ginger grid? An Acme? Was that ginger grid there presumably for the Slee server? Very, very odd Acme deck. Like, there's a lot of things in here that are anti-synergistic with Acme, or just have no synergy with Acme. A lot of it is built around Chief Slee, because Jinja is one of the last upgrades you would think in an Acme deck, since you don't typically want ice on the inside. Anyway, another attitude adjustment shuffles 2 more degree mills into R&D, buying Acme a bit more time. With only 1 card in HQ, it feels unlikely that it's another agenda. And Lat does still have 3 tokens on this conduit, but without a guaranteed method to get into R&D, and with only 3 credits. Oh, nope, he's gonna go for it. Forcing the Corp to show their hand. It is just a slot machine. Slot machines are porous. We're gonna see 4 new cards here, and this may be the game-winning run. It's a pretty good chance of it. There are 2 degree mills in R&D. Lat has 2 installed cards. There it is. 4th card is a degree mill. That's too bad. I think the Corp was just finally over the hill. But with slot machine being porous, if that had been a data ward, or heck, even an IP block, Endless Eula wouldn't have stopped it though. Yeah. Looks like the Corp had been planning on purging the next turn, and that's why Lat decided to do the risky conduit run, because they felt like it was their last chance to win, and they were correct. Ended up paying off for them. That was another fun game. That was a fun Corp deck to see. A very unexpected one. A lot of recursion in it. Presumably to recur all the nonsense going on with Chief Slee. So no matter how many times you trash her, she just keeps coming back. And I love the synergy with this guy's ice. Oh my goodness, even IP block synergizes with Chief Slee. Because if it's on the inside and the runner isn't tagged, they're never going to break the end the run subroutine. Or they're typically not going to. Of course, with Paperclip, you break it automatically, so that kind of sucks. But a lot of people, as we were discussing earlier, like to let IP block fire if they don't have a breaker installed and just fight the trace. But if you do that, it's another 2 tokens for Chief Slee. Yeah, this is what wasn't an Acme deck. It was a Chief Slee deck. Acme just happened to be the ID that the Corp chose. I don't know. I feel like maybe there would be a better ID for this, but maybe not. The data wards are pretty strong. Even just using Acme just for the data wards kind of almost makes sense on its own. Alright, as McCaffrey versus the oh-so-threatening Precision Design. I'll be honest, I'll be a little biased here. I always have to root for Az every time I see one. Really like Az. Never quite got around to putting a good deck together for him, though. Alright. First turn. Draw Ice Hedge Fund. Not too bad. Hedge, or rather the ice, goes in front of HQ, signifying that there are already agendas in HQ. Free R&D though. Az drops a prognostic Q loop. Makes a run. Gets to see the top 2 cards of R&D. Of his own stack. Gives him a little bit of insight there. Mutual favors. Nice. A lot of good synergy coming out on this first turn. Oh, and I missed the hedge fund, so he's got the money to do this. Draws a Bugalter. Very cool. I don't know if the Bugalter was the right call necessarily. But I mean, any breaker is a good breaker, right? It could be that he has perhaps the barrier breaker or the decoder already in hand, which is why he called the Bugalter out. Bugalter is also not terribly expensive to install. He could have also seen the decoder or the barrier breaker on the top of the stack with prognostic Q loop. We don't know enough information to really understand why the Bugalter was specifically chosen. Now, Precision Design drops a card behind a new server with a piece of ice in front of it and it advances it once. Kind of had to think this is a sandbox, Cyberdeck sandbox, an off-world office, some sort of 4-2. Az goes ahead and continues to take advantage of the open R&D. I like this decision. It's synergizing with his prognostic Q loop. In fact, he takes advantage of that to install a boomerang off the top of R&D, the top of the stack. I'll get it right eventually. Additionally, due to the installation of Boomerang, Masterwork draws him a card. Boomerang installed on the ice in front of server 1. It is an Enigma. Nice ice to use Boomerang against this early, considering you take full advantage of being able to break both those subroutines and avoiding the click loss if you had face checked it. And it is indeed an off-world office in server 1. Az shuffles that Boomerang back into R&D. His stack. He shuffles Boomerang back into his stack. Hansei review. Getting that boost economy. Sacrificing a card to do it, though. Precision Design gets a little bit of leeway to do that, though. If they lose an important card, they can always grab it back after they score the next agenda. Az still taking advantage of the completely open R&D. It's a Cyberdeck sandbox. Nice. It's not looking good for Precision Design. They've made some aggressive plays, and they weren't terrible plays either, but Az has just been able to slip just barely in. Was able to get the card out of server 1 and hit R&D enough times here to be able to snag an agenda off of the top. I don't know how I feel about this. He runs R&D and pays 2 to trash an Urtica cipher, but doesn't go back in. Corp responds by icing R&D and then putting another card into server 1. Another card into server 1, bringing our total up to 3. Az no longer has free reign of the board. Likewise, is down to 0 credits, so is going to need to figure out how to bounce back up financially. Points-wise, definitely in a commanding position, though. 4 to 0. A 3-pointer would do it. Otherwise, 2 more agendas, and he's got the game. Sansan City Grid res, allowing for the fast advance of off-world office. It's an expensive res, but the Corp had plenty of money to do so. And Lat does not have the ability to get in here and trash this, so presumably the Corp can now score 3 2s out of hand and 4 2s in a never advanced fashion. It's dangerous to leave that on the table, but again, Lat doesn't have a lot of say in the matter. He is able to bounce up here, or why do I keep saying Lat? Az doesn't have much to say in the matter. He's able to sure gambled up. So he's sitting at 9. But the Corp reinforces server 1 with another piece of ice, making it that much more difficult to contest the Sansan. And heck, if the Corp does run any 5-3s and also uses seamless launch, they can never advance their 5-3s. That draws and installs conduit. Okay. Little gutsy. Mostly because of the low credit count. And decides to immediately use conduit. Yeah, but here's the problem. Hagen is res, and with no barrier breaker, Hagen's just going to force a bounce. Not only that, it's going to trash the conduit. Oh no! Unless Lat can somehow pull out a barrier breaker, which I don't see happening. Yeah, this is rough. Oh boy. Yeah, it was definitely risky to just drop a conduit and run like that. And you know, it could have paid off. If for some reason the ice on R&D couldn't be rezzed, or it was porous, or anything like that, then yeah, the conduit run might have been worth it. But it was risky, and Az was punished for it. That's unfortunate. It's definitely going to give the Corp the tempo back that they needed. And in fact, here we go. A 3-2 scored right out of hand. Az probably needed to focus on getting in here and trashing the Sansan. I mean, I understand he's so close to winning, but still though, needs two agendas scored, more than likely, before he can win. And he can't do that with just a Begalter installed. Especially when the Enigma and the Hagen are both barriers. And, oh sorry, the Hagen is a barrier and the Enigma is a code gate. Red team dropped to gain a bit of money. Runs on archives, runs on HQ. With the corp being down to 5 credits, does look like the ice on HQ is not rezzed. This would be why. The corp immediately plays hedge fund on click 1 on the next turn. Az had a really good start to this, but I'd say the way things are looking, the corp really just needs to score 1 or 2 more agendas. In an unexpected move, they create a new server, protected by a piece of ice, and put something behind it. What could they possibly have behind that server? Is it a Rashida? No, if it was a Rashida, you just would have installed it in server 1. Same with an NGO front. What reason could there possibly be for... No, I don't like this. We red team into HQ, but Az, you're not going to be able to get away with this the second time. Yeah. The reason the corp didn't res the ice in front of HQ the first time is because they needed to save that money to hedge fund. But card is res. Luckily, it's just a magnet. That's not going to lose red team its money or anything like that. So Az decides to red team archives. Not the end of the world, but really... So red teaming archives 4 times isn't the worst thing ever. But when you think about it, you're spending 5 clicks, because 1 click to install, 4 clicks to run. 5 clicks and 5 credits to gain 12 credits. It's not good. So you need to be doing something with those runs in order to really make it valuable. Now, he is triggering Prognostic Q Loop, but I would almost say that that's not enough to justify running archives over and over. But to be fair, he has used it to do other things. He ran into HQ last turn, ran into HQ this turn, forced a res on Magnet. It's something. Regardless, it looks like the card protected in server 2 is just a Nico campaign. Not as interesting as I thought it might be, but understandable why you wouldn't want that in server 1. You want server 1 to be open for any kind of agenda play. Alright, so Scrubber's dropped. I don't know if I've seen the new art on Scrubber yet. Scrubber dropped, inside job used to get into server 1, and Managarm Skunkworks revealed. With no clicks in play, Az has to pay the 5 credits if he wants to get in, but that brings him down to 2 credits. He shouldn't have paid this. He doesn't have the money now to trash... Oh, no, he's got the Scrubber money, of course. Does get in using Scrubber money, pays to trash Managarm. That's something. Had to spend the inside job though to do it, and the corp drops another 3-2 into that Sansan City Grid server. That is, I believe, the 3rd agenda scored with that Sansan, and that is just, that's tough. That's a lot of value out of that single Sansan. The agenda scored was a Luminal Transubstantiation. Corp just goes ahead and puts another card in server 1 with one of those clicks from Luminal. This could be the game-winning agenda. Can Az get into server 1 one more time? It's only a single card in his grip. It feels unlikely that that would be another inside job. Could be. He red teams into HQ. Has the Unity, can break into HQ for 2 credits. Red team's gonna gain him 3, so he's actually coming out a credit up from this. accesses a San City grid. Not really what you want to see. That's tough. We haven't seen any 5/3s. And even if there were, they would likely be Vatron projects or Iqua projects. Meaning that if they were Vatrons, you'd just be out of luck. And if it was an Iqua, you need 2 credits and a click to steal it. It just doesn't look like there's much of an out here. As running out of options, run server 1. Presumably the corpse is going to res this outermost piece of ice, and that's going to be that. No. Corp lets him in. Oh. Well, there you have it. The card in server 1 is a Managarm Skunkworks. Az can't even get in here. Has to pay to break Enigma since he already encountered it. Paid to break the Enigma? Not sure what happened there. But then also fired it? Probably not important. At this point, though, the corp just... Oh, they biotic labor? This must be a 5/3. No? Wait. Why are they biotic labor? Oh, because it was a 4/2. Of course. Yeah, biotic labors, they're 4/2 for the win. Overall, was pretty fun. Really liked Az's setup. Not so much his setup, I should say, as the moves he was making early were good. I think that conduit run was risky. Probably shouldn't have been done. There was no need to risk the conduit run at that point, I think is how I would put it. Like, if it's the last turn and you know you're gonna lose, totally makes sense. But he wasn't in a position where he needed to be desperate. So I don't think the conduit run was the right call. Also, installing the Begalter against HB. There aren't a lot of scary sentinels coming out of HB. I mean, even just looking at the ice that was rezzed here, there are no sentinels. It's not that HB never uses sentinels, it's just they're way more likely to have code gates and barriers early on in the game. So I think instead of using mutual favor for the Begalter, because at this point I think we can determine that no, the other 2 breakers weren't revealed by Prognostic Q Loop, as was down to 1 card in hand at one point. So I think we can safely say that no, he didn't have... Well, one of them might have been Unity, I'm not sure. Regardless, I don't think he should have pulled the Begalter. I think he should have either pulled the Unity or pulled whatever his barrier breaker is. And that would have actually let him do the Hagen run. Because he lost Conduit because of Hagen. I don't know what the barrier breaker he uses is, though, and that's kind of bothering me. It's making it difficult to do the calculations here. The runner says he used 3 mutual favors over multiple copies of breakers. I see. So he's only running 1 of each breaker, but 3 mutual favors. Even the corp is saying that that boomerang move at the beginning of the game was great, which it was. But yeah. Az apparently still learning how to play the deck. Definitely understandable. Yeah, that's where we're gonna call it for the night. Maybe I'll catch you at some other time for more Netrunner games. Otherwise, take it easy out there. Oh. Sorry, watch me suffer. I didn't see you there. What are you using to play this? I'll send you a link here. If you go to genteki.net. Oh, no worries. Yeah, just a fan-made way to play Netrunner online. And you can use Netrunner DB, which is another website, to build your deck. They have a deck builder on Genteki, but it's not quite as good as the one on Netrunner DB. You can import them from Netrunner DB. But yeah, I usually stream around this time, so if you're in the neighborhood again, love to catch you later. Otherwise, take it easy out there.